Alright, let's talk about the Avatar. Alright, let's talk about the Avatar reboot. So, I'm sure that you've all heard about the live action series of Avatar over on Netflix. It seems to have frustrated people with some initial news. Specifically, that Aang was supposed to be less childish, and that Sokka was gonna be less sexist. But I haven't seen anybody talk about the actual show itself. So, I'm here to do that. Now, before I begin, I actually kind of liked the live action show. It had some good aspects, it had some good changes, but there are some stuff that frustrated me because they did change a lot. And it really seems like they forgot the fundamentals of what Avatar was supposed to be about. I'll get in them in a little bit, but let's just start off by looking at the length. The original first season is 20 episodes with about 20 minutes made for each of them. And the Avatar live action show has 8 episodes, 1 hour each ish. The first one being a complete 60 minutes. The other episodes are typically in between 40 to 60 minutes, varying depending on which episode it is. Now, this created some issues with pacing, and specifically combining episodes of the original show to make new episodes and make a new timeline and events that make sense with the 8 episode with 1 hour runtime. And it does it pretty poorly. There are some times that it does it all right, but we'll get into it in a little bit. Let's just talk about the beginning first. For one, they immediately told us about Aang's backstory, which doesn't make any sense, and that he is the Avatar immediately, and as well as that he didn't actually run away from home. He just kind of left. So I don't. It kind of maybe it's supposed to like get rid of Aang's guilt, but no. The whole point is that he ran away from his responsibilities, and so the temple got destroyed. He blames himself for the fall of the temple because he wasn't there. That's the whole point of him having run away. It's a plot device. It's plot. You can't get rid of plot. And the whole point is that he learns that that isn't what happened, that even if he had been there, it wouldn't have ended well. He would have just died with the rest of them. But he still ran away, and so he just hates himself for it. It is a strange difference, but it's not necessarily something that I hate. Although Aang does fly now without his glider, with just airbending, which is supposed to be something that you don't learn until you learn to let go of everything, which he probably would have learned to do at the end of season 2 and the beginning of season 3 because of events that happened at the end of season 2. But no, he gets to fly already. He just has the ability to fly. Anyway, the live action series is a lot shorter, but because of these hour-long episodes, it seems to have drug out the plot a lot. The flashback for Aang and his backstory is really long and drawn out, and it's very hard to sit through. We get to see a couple things. We get to see his old master, and we get to see the entire battle. The full battle. Everything. They do not censor a single thing. But the thing is that they don't actually focus on Aang and Appa and what's happening over there in the ocean. We get like tiny little flashes over to it, but the bulk of this scene is the air temple, watching the airbenders get massacred by the firebenders, which is, I know you want this to be a gritty reboot, but why? Why would you do this? We see someone get burned alive. We get people getting their heads ripped off. We get a lot of people just dying over and over again. Why? Anyway, the live action series, we open with, anyway, when we enter, um, nowadays, we see a different relationship between Katara and Sokka. The original, we have very clearly that Sokka doesn't really respect Katara as a person because she is a woman and because she is younger than him. So he doesn't really respect it and believes that he should be in charge. But also now he's kind of really bending phobic. We know he didn't really like bending in the beginning of the original series, but they've really honed in on it. But also, he is extremely overprotective over Katara. Extremely. Which, I mean, he has a reason to. But the whole point of his character is that he believes that he can protect everybody. So what's the point in being worried if he believes he can protect everyone? It also implies that there may be earthbending spies within their little tribe. Which, why? Because Sokka wants Katara to hide her bending and never learn to use it. Which isn't something from the original series. Like, sure, maybe she doesn't use her bending as much in front of her grandmother because of what happened to her mother. But she doesn't hide it from Sokka. And now she is hiding it from Sokka because Sokka hates her. Sokka hates that she has to use it. So they turned his sexism into overprotective brother disease. Anywhere when they find this time being a fight over Sokka being sexist in the original, like it is in the original, Katara is trying to water bend the canoe back to them, which she does successfully, but in the process awakens Aang. And then they immediately take him to the tribe. He's not even awake yet. He's still asleep. And they leave Appa there. They leave Appa all alone. Although I am still glad that Sokka is an asshole, he is very clearly an asshole. He's very mean. He's an asshole to Aang. Aang is an asshole back. Katara is a lot sweeter than she was in the animated series. She's kind of lost a lot of her spunk and personality. It just, I don't. He's really nice to the boys, except Sokka, but only when he's being mean. Just what the fuck. Or when they get to the airbend, or when they get to the water temple, and they refuse to let her fight. The first episode basically goes similar to the beginning of the animated series, but everything is kind of dragged out. Aang awakes and he shows off his bending power, proving to everybody that he is, in fact, the Avatar already? Because Granny is like, "You are the Avatar!" And he's like, "Fuck." And she's like, "You have been asleep for 100 years." And he's like, "Fuck." And he runs away. And also, he shows up as flying, but he shows off his airbending immediately. He is very strong and very powerful, which is what he does in the original, but it's a lot stranger, which I'll get into later, because there is something else that gets revealed within this season that would have been in the place of him revealing that he ran away from home. There is also one really big change from the first episode at the very end. Katara gets a waterbending scroll from their grandmother. Now, if you don't watch Avatar, then you may not know that Katara is not supposed to get a waterbending scroll until the middle of season 1, when she gets it from the pirates. But the pirates have been completely removed from the series, and we never see them at all. So, she needs a different way to get the waterbending scroll. So she just gets it from her grandmother. Immediately. And not only that, but Aang doesn't learn waterbending. What infuriates me about this most of all is the fact that the entire point of the entire series is that the Avatar is supposed to be the master of all four elements. So what the fuck was that he's supposed to be more focused on being the Avatar and less focused on being a kid? What was that? Where did that go? It's not here anymore. He's just airbending. He doesn't waterbend a single time. And not only that, but in season 1, he also experiments with firebending. He does neither of them in season 1. He has not bended a single time. A single thing other than airbending. He's not done anything. No training. No nothing. And you know the reason why they end up going to the Southern Temple instead? In the second episode, we get Aang meeting Kyoshi right away at Kyoshi Island. And Kyoshi tells him during a battle happening at the island that the Northern Water Temple is going to be attacked and destroyed. Why? I don't fucking know. The whole point of the original series is that the reason why they attack the Northern Water Temple is because Aang is there. They want to kill the Avatar, and in the process, he gets carried away and ends up killing the Water Spirit, which also ends up killing the Avatar a little bit, almost did that. But nope, that is not here. Instead, we get a full reason for him to go there that is not bending. He does not want to go up there to find a bending teacher. He wants to go up there to save somebody's life, to save the kingdom from falling to the firebenders. Another thing that happens in the Kyoshi Island episode is that because Sokka no longer is sexist and no longer has a reason to fight with Suki, they instead spend the entire episode flirting and training and very much flirting. And Sokka never wears makeup or even wears Kyoshi warrior garb, which is kind of weird. But yeah, that's the entire episode is them flirting. Not only that, but we actually find out about Sozin's Comet already. Aang already knows about Sozin's Comet. One other thing that happens in episode 1 that actually is brought up throughout the series is that we find out that Zuko has been studying the Avatar for the past 3 years. Not 2, 3 years. Don't know why that was changed. Maybe it was because they forgot how this works. He's been apparently searching for the Avatar for the past 3 years, and he has collected a lot of little merchandise. He has a bunch of little statues of all the different avatars in his room, and they glow when Aang is revealed. But not only that, but he also has a notebook full of information on the Avatar. And Aang steals this. In the original series, we have a confrontation between Aang and Zuko in Zuko's bedroom. But instead, Zuko is not there, and Aang just goes in there and steals his notebook and then leaves. And the entire rest of the series, Zuko is spent trying to find the notebook and trying to find out who stole it. Because he doesn't know that Aang stole it. And this will come up later. I'll tell you why it will come up later. When I bring it up! Anyway, Kyoshi is talking to Aang and Zuko, and them come to the island and attack them. Obviously, as they do in the original series. And then Kyoshi manifests through Aang and beats the shit out of everybody. And then they leave forever. And Sokka and Suki full on kiss. They've made out. Which I think removes the entire point that they're not supposed to be together, and Sokka's supposed to be kind of oblivious to Suki being in love with him. What the fuck? They're not supposed to be official. They seem very official by the end of this. But of course, they leave on the way to the Northern Water Temple. And not only that, but they don't leave to draw away Zuko like they do in the animated series because Kyoshi's here to beat the shit out of them and almost kill Zuko. Also, Zuko and Katara were about to fight, which would have been really cool, but instead Kyoshi had to take that away from us. I guess they don't want us to have them fight until later. I'll talk more on that at the end of the episode, the end of the video. Not only that, but the destruction of the Northern Water Tribe gives the series a deadline. They have to get to the Northern Water Tribe before it gets destroyed. Although I don't think they know when that is. So they just kind of have to get there as fast as possible. Which is weird, considering, as I said before, the only reason why the Water Tribe gets destroyed in the first place is because Aang is there, and then he gets the idea to destroy the Water Temple in the first place, because he's already going that way. And of course, they never teach Aang waterbending. Still doesn't know how to. The next episode is Omashu. This one is very strange. It's 3 separate episodes from the original series in one, whereas the last 2 are 2 episodes that were just drawn out really far. This one is 3 episodes combined together. Again, the pacing in this series is really, really weird. But the episodes that are being combined is also weird. We got Omashu, obviously. Jet, the Air Gliders, and the Tunnel of Love. It's 4, I lied. I lied, it's 4. It's 4. The Tunnel of Love. The Tunnel of Love! The Tunnel of Love happens in season 2! Why is it here? What is going on? Okay, let's get into this. Let's get into this. Anyway, this episode combines all of these episodes into one. We enter Omashu as, the strict land that it is, and they get in via Jet. They sneak in with Jet, and they're in there. And in here, we find the inventor and his boy, the air glider boy. They do not have their own little mountain in the air temple. They just live in Omashu. And he can fly because his dad made him a winged wheelchair. And it's nothing else. That's all it is. That's all it is. So those are the first 3 episodes. You may be wondering where Tunnel of Love comes in, and I'll tell you later. Anyway, at the end of this episode, Zuko and Iroh are here, obviously, for reasons. And Zuko confronts Aang, and at first he tries to not use his firebending so they don't get arrested. And he attacks Aang, and they fight for a while, before Aang accidentally reveals that he has Zuko's journal. And Zuko is infuriated. And Zuko, basically, almost kills him with fire. And then, of course, Zuko almost gets arrested, but instead, Iroh gets arrested in his place. Which is where we get this section from also season 1, but later on in season 1. Where in that episode, Iroh gets arrested, and Zuko has to save him, and it's sort of like, a stretch in his priorities. Which, of course, is the same thing that happens here, except they've done it a lot earlier, and it's a lot different. So in this one, Iroh basically does the same thing, except Iroh is not naked in this one. So he gets kidnapped by the king. Basically what happens is that our inventor guy is revealed to be a spy by Jet, actually. Jet tells Katara, and Jet and the Freedom Fighters have planned to kill him along with his son and the king, basically by blowing them up with a bomb they planted on him. He is going to die. It is full of explosive jelly, and one of the freedom fighters is in a tree about to shoot a flaming arrow at it, and it is going to explode. But luckily, Aang is able to get it out of there and save the king from that And so he gets kidnapped into he gets arrested. So Katara has to save the king by blocking the arrow. Also, Aang gets arrested along with Iroh because he fought, and obviously that's illegal. Aang and Iroh have a little chat, and Iroh's like, I hate you, and he gets taken away. And Aang goes and talks to Bumi. And Aang immediately knows this is Bumi. He immediately knows already that this is Bumi. And Bumi is fucking insane. Okay, we know Bumi is supposed to be this silly little crazy guy in the original series. He's just kind of silly. He is very childish. They threw all of that away. He is a psychopath. He is insane. He tries to kill Aang himself. What? The original point of Bumi's little games in the original series is 1, to get Aang to remember his name, and 2, to get him to realize to think outside the box. Which I guess is more of the thing outside the box. And that is completely thrown away, and instead, his lesson is that Aang should be a ruthless killer? Which is kind of what Kyoshi already told him. So, he already got that advice. I don't know why this series really wants Aang to kill people. Is Aang going to kill the Fire Lord at the end of the series? Is Aang going to kill the Fire Lord? Not only that, but one of the other things in the original series is that he should never judge a book by its cover. Each one of the trials has a lesson. But in this one, they don't. It's just Bumi being mean to him and bullying him until Tara and Sokka find him via the Tunnel of Love. Sokka and Katara get into the Tunnel of Love. I will talk about this a bit more later, but Aang never visits the Tunnel of Love in season 1, so he's not doing that. This is a thing in the original. Obviously, the Tunnel of Love does connect to Omashu, but this one is a bit strange because 1, it happens in the middle of an episode, and it's really small, too. It is a really tiny section. Not only that, but our lovely nomads are just chilling inside the cave and don't want to go inside the tunnel. They're like, no, you'd never go in there. It's too dangerous. You'll die in there. And so Sokka and Katara are like, oh shit, we're gonna die in there. But they're supposed to go in there. We also do get a glimpse at our lovely the badger moles, which look great. They have will say that this show has some pretty good CGI. It looks pretty good. Everything so far has looked nice, except for the fact that Momo kind of scares me. He looks a little scary. He is terrifying. He's terrifying. Not only that, but Zuko ends up in the prison in Omashu, masked as a guard, and realizes that Iroh and Aang were in there, and that they went in two different places, so Zuko has to make the decision to go save Iroh instead of go to kill Aang. Which is, character development from the original series, so I guess they're keeping that. I will say that this series seems to focus a lot on Zuko and his character development and doing him justice, and it does that pretty well, in my opinion. Not only that, but of course, I'm going to talk about Katara and Aang. There is nothing. There's no romantic tension anywhere here. In the original series, Aang is always flirting with Katara, and he flirts with her throughout the entirety of Tunnel of Love, and even plans to tell her that he likes her. But of course, they don't do that here. Instead, what they use instead is sibling love between Katara and Sokka. They use sibling love to get to the end of the tunnel. Well, they don't tell you that. They don't tell you that. They just kind of imply it, I guess. This is also a great time to mention another addition to the story. Aang is a god. Aang has always been a very powerful bender. It's even mentioned in season 2 that he is a very extremely powerful bender. He is the Avatar. He's supposed to be very powerful. He is a master of air at this point, at the young age of 12. But instead, In the live action, he is terrified of hurting people with his bending powers. Because he's so powerful, he can barely control himself. This is a whole thing now. This explains why he becomes a master at such a young age. He has so much power in him that he cannot control it at all. And so he needs to become a master to learn how to control that power. If he didn't want to hurt people, then he had to keep his power. We see that Aang has almost killed people. He almost killed his class back in the day in the fucking air temple. This is his reason for being a pacifist. Not because it's morally wrong or because of the monks' teachings. Because obviously, the monks' teaching ones is bad. It doesn't make any sense because they did murder a bunch of firebenders. But in this one, instead, they give him a new reason. Because he will literally kill people, and he almost has. He almost has. He does not want to do that anymore, so he must be pacifist. Also, this Amashu episode is split into 2 episodes. The one about just the town, introducing it, and of course it ends with Aang getting arrested, and then the second one, which includes all of the trials, and ends with Katara and Sokka saving him from the Tunnel of Love. So they just split all 4 of these episodes up into 2 episodes, but there are aspects in all of them. Like, Jet is just a fucking bitch. I will say, the Jet is really pretty. He's kind of pretty. But no, don't want to be here. Don't want to be here. Also, in the next 2 episodes, we also are combined with a few others. This is another one of those big events like the last one, where it is 2 episodes that basically have the same storyline. The first episode, we meet our lovely, sexy bounty hunter. We also have the village plagued by a spirit. In the original series, we have the town being attacked by the spirit and having people getting abducted. And this version, Sokka also gets abducted, and Aang has to save Sokka, but he is currently in the spirit realm, and then he gets shoved to Roku's temple by the dragon to meet Roku for the first time in the next episode. That's a setup for the next episode. Then after that, he defeats the spirit by telling it that the force is going to go back, and then it can go home. My camera turned off, so have fun with a bunch of visuals! Woo! And it lets all of them go. And this one, there's something else in the spirit world that is attacking the civilians. Not only are they all being taken in there by the spirit of the forest, they're also being kept there and almost murdered by the spirit Ko. This spirit is only met in the later episodes of... This is the spirit that Aang meets in the last episode of the original season. Original first season, that is. The face-stealing spirit kidnaps Sokka and Katara, but Aang is able to get away. Sokka and Katara also have flashbacks when they were younger. For Katara, this one is her mother being killed, but Sokka's is different. He sees the day that he passed, but actually failed his ice-dodging trials. His father calls him a disappointment, and he's really sad. Not only is this kind of weird that this is his big moment that's, like, really devastating for him, and not the moment that his mother got murdered, and his father had to leave him forever, but, which is what it originally was in the original series. Sokka has a flashback to when his father had to leave him, but actually, Sokka never did his ice-dodging trials. His father left before he could do them. And in fact, we do the ice-dodging trials in Season 2 with Aang and Katara. Anyway, Aang has to find Roku, because he can tell him how to defeat the spirit. And we get an almost identical scene to the original one, except Sokka and Katara are just not here anymore. So, Aang is going up to the temple, just like he was in the original. And, but this time, the bounty hunter is after him. Wanna know how many episodes this combines? Wanna know how many episodes this combines? So, Next thing that happens is that we have basically the same thing happens in the temple. Aang gets in the temple with the help of one of the sages who actually wants to help the Avatar, but he gets in without any trouble, and he ends up talking to Roku. But when he gets out, all of the sages are on the ground, paralyzed. And Aang is too terrified to realize that our sexy bounty woman is right behind him. And so she tricks him with with the tail, and he is down. And he wakes up in a cave with her tied up, and she hands him over to Zuko and Iroh. But then, but then Zhao comes and takes Aang with him and imprisons him. And guess what this episode is? Well, guess what this episode is called? It's called The Fucking Mask! Zuko ends up saving him with the blue spirit mask, and of course we have a similar scene to the original. I believe the entirety of the escape scene plays out exactly the same as it does in the original animated series, which is played very nice. And Zuko does not say a word or use firebending, which is obviously what he's supposed to do. But then Aang and Zuko have a real conversation at the end of this. Zuko and him are hiding in a house, trying to hide from Zhao and them, who are still looking for them. And they have a long conversation about how Zuko's notebook helped Aang along the way, and how they're pretty alike in how they are, and about their lives, and how everything has happened. And then he says that Zuko can change his purpose and that he doesn't have to be doing this. And obviously Zuko gets very mad at this because he hasn't had his realization that his father doesn't care about him. And so he attacks Aang. But instead, Aang knocks him out on accident. Like, he fully knocks out him. And then he's like, oh no, I'm sorry! Aw, shit! Which I guess is really proving that he really is too powerful for himself, because he accidentally knocked Zuko out with one fell swoop. And then when he wakes up, we have the line that Aang asks if we were together, if we had met each other back then, could we have been friends? I still love that line, and I love that it's in this series. It's great. And then Aang leaves and saves Sokka and Katara afterwards. That is a lot of episodes. That is quite a few episodes. Okay. Well, before that, also a while before that, I believe it is during the Omashu little arc area, we get Zuko's backstory. And this one is it's worse. Not only that, but I didn't mention this. During the entire series, most of the episodes, we get flashes back to what's happening in the Fire Nation this time. Specifically with Azula. Azula's here! Azula's doing things. She is training with her father, doing these trials to prove her worth to him, and that is what is going on. Not only that, but she is also helping Zhao behind the scenes to sabotage Zuko so that she can become the Fire Lord. Not only that, May and Ty Lee are here for some reason, even though they're not supposed to arrive until the second season. Then we get Zhao's betrayal, and the kids reach the north. Now, let's talk changes. For one, instead of Zhao stealing all the members of his ship and Iroh leaving conveniently, Zuko alone is blown up, being sent away on a ship to because Zhao told Ji, who is now very loyal to him due to what happened in the whole Zuko backstory episode. He tells Zuko that Zhao plans to kill him and turn him over to the Fire Lord. So Zuko runs away. And this is supposed to be like this thing that mentions how all of his crew members really value him as a person now, which I really like that addition, because in the original they never really do seem to respect Zuko as a person. Even after that episode where they're basically told that Zuko isn't actually as mean as they thought he was. And then Zuko gets blown up on the boat. And they all think that he's dead, except for obviously Iroh, who obviously knows that he's still alive because they find out. Then we get to the north. Yue is no longer engaged. Well, she was, but not anymore. She conveniently broke it off 2 years ago. Even though the whole point is that she doesn't actually want to marry him, but was marrying it for the sake of her kingdom anyway. But her ex-boyfriend is so salty. But Aang is told by Aang goes to the. Not only that, but something that I also mentioned that I forgot to mention before is that within the spirit world, Sokka meets a fox, a white nine-tailed fox, in the middle of the woods before he is caught by Ko, and that all happens. It's explained in this episode that Yue was the fox. Yue can enter the spirit world now. Why? Why? I don't know. It's because of her connection to the spirit. Not because. Okay, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about Yue's backstory. Yue has a new backstory, which she immediately explains to Sokka for some reason. Yue was sick as a child and was not dying and did not have a soul. And so the moon spirit gave her part of its power to heal her. That is our story. And now apparently that means that she is able to enter the spirit world. And she's a fox. A nine-tailed fox, for some reason. So Yue is on the cusp of the spirit world and the human world. Kind of like how Aang is supposed to be. But why? Okay. This technically does make sense, but it's still kind of infuriating because the change doesn't really seem to have a meaning. Other than to have Yue introduced a little bit early on. And to have Sokka and her have something to talk about other than just flirting. Which they do a lot of. Aang also meets the water avatar in this episode. And he explains something about losing loved ones and not wanting Katara and Sokka to fight so that they don't die. He is just fully on board with this. I don't want my friends to die, so Katara and Sokka are not allowed to fight in this war. They do anyway, obviously. But when Katara comes to him about the fact that they don't want her to fight, instead of fighting for her like he does in the original series, or even secretly going behind their backs and training her anyway with stuff that he's learning, because he's not learning anything, he just straight up says, maybe it's a good thing that you're not going to fight. Maybe he's right. Maybe you should stay on the sidelines and be a good girl and a healer, because I don't want you to get hurt. And she's like, fuck? Seriously? Huh? This is not Aang? Who are you? Who are you? What is going on? Like, yes, he does have concerns about his friends being hurt, but not to the point where he's afraid of them fighting. Plus, in my opinion, the best way to protect somebody is to make sure that they're right next to you. If they're fighting along with you, then you can easily protect them and make sure that they're okay. But no! You must stay like a woman in the bathhouse and help heal individuals when they get hurt so that we don't die. Instead, you don't get to fight. What the fuck? Anyway, it isn't until the middle of the battle that Paku realizes that Katara is able to learn waterbending, and he lets her she lets her guide a legion of young men who are just starting waterbending, and that is his little. He doesn't even say a word to her about it. He just sends them over, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Master Paku sent us to you. He told us to follow you, Master Katara." And she's like, "What the fuck?" And obviously, Sokka takes Yue and a bunch of other civilians into the grove. Momo almost dies. Momo pushes somebody out of the way of falling rocks, and he gets crushed. And they faked us out. They almost killed Momo. I was kind of afraid that they would, but he did not die. He is not dead. Also, during this time, Zuko is finding his way into the castle. But however, before Katara, Aang, and Zuko can get in there, Zhao is already there with Iroh. Zhao is killing the moon spirit. Zuko finds Katara and Aang while this is happening in a different room, while all three of them are unaware of what's actually going on. Katara sends Aang to go after them to try to stop Zhao from killing the spirit, because obviously, don't kill the spirit. And Zuko and Katara have their big battle, but it's instead combined to a little tiny room, which is strange. Finally, Aang arrives, but the moon spirit dies anyway, and Aang gives his body to the ocean spirit. Before Yue gives her soul to the water to moon spirit. Katara gets Aang down, and everything is okay, and the battle ends. And the Northern Water Tribe is saved. But now the series ends with the destruction of Omashu, which is supposed to be like a secret. In the original series, they don't tell us that Omashu has been conquered until we get back to Omashu after Tunnel of Love. It's the whole point of that episode, is that they didn't know. They want to come back because they think that Bumi can train him on earthbending. Of course, I guess they can't do that anymore because Aang doesn't give a shit about ending at all, does he? And of course, Azula is now the person who just overtook Omashu, which is, of course, what happens in the original series. And that's basically the end of the season. I will also say, when the moon spirit dies and everything goes red and black and white and everything, it's fucking beautiful. It is amazing. It is beautiful. However, another difference is that Yue's... Oh, wait. I've talked about a lot of changes, but I'd like to do some more now. There are some very big changes. For one, Zhao's betrayal is a very big slow burn now. In the original series, we already know that Zhao has terrible, terrible intentions for Zuko. And Zuko knows that, along with Uro and all of the other crewmates. They all know that Zhao is not to be trusted. In this series, Zuko trusts Zhao to a certain extent. He has some sort of respect for him, and he does not know that Zhao intends to kill him. He does not know that until he does kill him, or tries. And it takes a long time for Zuko to realize, and also, sadly, they never actually do the Agni Kai, because obviously Zhao is not very upfront about his disdain for Zuko, which I'm sad. But Zhao does die. Zuko kills Zhao. Well, the thing is that during the section where Aang is being aggressive and going around the town, fighting firebenders, probably killing them, Zuko and Zhao have a fight. They are very aggressive because Zhao says that his father does not love him and that he will never let him go home. Which is very true, but Zuko doesn't want to accept that. So of course he fights him. And of course in this version, Zuko does not actually want Zhao to die. Zhao falls off a cliff and Zuko tries to help him. But he does not help him, and instead Zhao lets himself fall into the depths and dies. He is dead. Not only that, but there are also a lot of other people who died. At the end of the war, we see a whole bunch of dead people, including Haru, who is Yue's ex-boyfriend. He is dead. He never finds out that Yue died, which I find is really, really sad. The first episode is the first episode. We're also going to talk about the episodes that are cut from the series that didn't make a lot of sense. The first episode that was cut entirely is Imprisoned. This is the episode where Katara meets an earthbender and accidentally gets him arrested, and so she gets herself arrested to save him, and they lead a prison riot. The reason why I'm upset about this is because this is useful in showing how the rest of the world is affected by the Fire Nation. For one, it shows the impact of the Fire Nation on very smaller villages. We didn't really find any of that in the Avatar live-action show. We see that this town is completely controlled by the Fire Nation. They are not allowed to earthbend, or else they will be taken to the ship. Plus, live-action series, we have not seen how they treat the earthbenders, or any other bender for that matter. We don't see how terrible the prisons are. how brutal they are and how brutal the Fire Nation can be. This episode is really shown to accentuate our hatred for the Fire Nation and why they are not to be trifled with, and why Aang really does need to bring them down, because they are so cruel and and terrible. The next episode is the waterbending scroll episode. This is up for an obvious reason. Katara doesn't have to steal a scroll from the pirates because she already has one. Plus, this is also why Zuko's murder attempt is done differently. Shao originally contacts the pirates because they don't like Zuko because of what happens in this episode, and so they agree to go kill Zuko. But of course, now this has not happened, so they do not have any grudge against him and do not kill him. The next is the Great Divide. This episode follows the group as they lead two tribes across the canyon in hopes of getting the two to get along. The point of this episode is the Avatar's diplomatic skills, and showing how he can take two groups of opposing sides and bring them together, or at least he tries. Then there's the Storm. This episode isn't too important aside from this is the original episode where Zuko's backstory is, and Aang tells his as well. Instead, these scenes are repurposed into new scenes, and Sokka doesn't get to go fishing. The Fortune Teller. This is the original episode where they find a fortune teller and they have to save a village from a volcano when she says that there is not going to be that. I believe that this episode is probably removed because of the romantic implications of this episode. This episode is the episode that he mentioned that that we find out that Katara and Aang have like a thing for each other, and that they're probably going to be together in the end. This has not happened, and of course, they are not going to go that route, as it seems, so they didn't. This episode is mostly for romantic development, so it's not in the series. Now, Plateau of the Water Tribe. This is an episode that's very confusing as to why it is cut. It's a very important episode that has multiple uses. For one, we find out that Sokka and Katara's father is still alive and perfectly fine. We also get Aang feeling left out because he's a self-absorbed kid. This is also the initial episode the bounty hunter comes into play. And the final episode that was cut completely is Deserter. This episode is about Aang learning firebending for the first time. This episode has a lot of purpose. First off, it mentions how stupid Aang is and how reckless he is. And this episode shows how he needs to learn to control himself before he can master firebending. During this episode, Katara gets hurt, and she finds out that she can use healing magic. Aang hates himself for hurting her and vows to never learn firebending again. This episode also serves as character development for Zhao, as the master who teaches Aang is also Zhao's old teacher, and this episode shows how controlled and reckless Zhao is, as a purpose that foreshadows his later behavior with the Moon Spirit. Not only that, but Zhao and Aang get to fight at the end of this episode, which I'm very sad that they didn't get to. Another removed aspect is Zuko's constant training. It's mentioned a few times, but we don't actually get any training montages, and instead these training montages are given to Azula. Anyway, I did like the series, and it does prioritize different things. As I said, it doesn't waterbend throughout the entire series, so it really seems like they really did forget what Avatar is supposed to be about, and who the Avatar is. For one, I love the way that they've written Zuko. It's very accurate and very adorable, and we love him. And the aspects that they added that were not in the original TV show are pretty good. He is very good, and he has a pretty nice character development throughout the series that is pretty paced pretty well, probably because they had a good base to work off of. Most of his character development is straight from the original series, except for a few elements, such as him and Aang fighting at Omashu. That is an added element that I think is actually pretty good, because it does show his temper and how he can control himself, but also how he cannot control himself. Also, I feel like Zuko's scar can be a little bit more scarry, but everything else I think is pretty good other than the things that I mentioned. It does have weird pacing issues, and I really don't like these pacing issues. Do you have anything to say? What some lovely news. All in all, I'm going to give this series a 5 out of 10. It's not bad, but it has a lot of room for improvement, and it's not getting very good. It's also hard to make a perfect remake. It's also hard to make a remake of a perfect series, but I feel like they should have used shorter episodes so that they could have focused on this series better, and because the pacing is really off. The episodes that they removed are also very important, so I feel like they would have had more time to dedicate to other episodes if they had done shorter episodes. Anyway, I hope that they improve as the series goes along, and I do not want the series to end, because I do think that it is pretty good. The CGI is good, most of the writing is good, but they do seem to have forgotten a lot of elements of the series, and so 5 out of 10 it is. It's mediocre at best. Anyway, that is all for today, and I'm gonna go master firebending!